Hello everyone, welcome to another Friday Closeout. Today we are going to continue on in the Sermon on the Mount with a passage that kind of hits home. Like everything in this whole section of scripture just really hits home for me, but this is like hits home every day. So if you have a Bible, we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 5, starting in verse 21. And in this section of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is dealing with anger. He says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment.' But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, 'You fool,' will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny." Here's what's really crazy and convicting about the Sermon on the Mount, right? Jesus talks about murder. And if you talk about murder, I mean, who's going to be like, yeah, it's kind of okay. No. You talk about that and people are going to go, no, this is wrong. Absolutely, 100% wrong. You don't do it. And he kind of builds off of that. He's like, yep, absolutely, 100%. The law says that as well. Don't murder. But then what does Jesus say? As he does throughout the whole Sermon on the Mount, he digs underneath the surface, right? Because all of us can probably go, you know what? I'm not a murderer. I'm not that bad of a person. I'm pretty much okay. But have you ever been angry? Yeah, me too. Now let's make a caveat here. There is such a thing as good and righteous anger, right? Anger is not necessarily a bad thing. It is an emotion. An emotion is kind of a morally neutral thing. It's what does that emotion drive us to do, and where is that emotion coming from? And that is what Jesus is getting at. And that is why this is such a hard passage, because Jesus is concerned about the condition of our hearts and how our hearts can drive us to anger, to hatred. And when you get to that point, that first thing, that murder thing, you got to get through a lot of steps to get there, but you've got to get to hatred. And so Jesus is getting at the roots of the problem. He's not just addressing the symptoms, right? So it's allergy season in Texas. Is it ever not allergy season in Texas? It may always be allergy season in Texas. But during this time of year in Texas, I have to take allergy pills every single day. If I forget, my nose runs, my throat gets scratchy, my eyes get itchy. Sometimes they do anyway, just because the cedar here can get so bad. But if I forget to take that allergy pill, those symptoms just come to the surface. Now, that just tells you that those symptoms, there's some other underlying stuff going on there. And just taking the pill, it's not going to get the cedar out of the air. So anger is not just what is happening on the surface. It's not just that explosive rage, right? There's something else happening inside that's driving it. And that's what Jesus is getting after. If your anger towards your brother, towards your sister, towards your boss, towards your coworker, towards your spouse, towards your kids, or whatever it is, if what's driving that is sinful and fundamentally broken, then that anger is wrong. And that is what Jesus is driving at here. So he says, I say to everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. Because when your heart, the way that it is oriented towards someone is an orientation of hatred or of despising that person, that is a problem. And Jesus says in other places in the Sermon on the Mount, and we'll get there, that you're supposed to love not just your brother, not just your sister, not just your family, your friends, the people who you have some level of care about, but you're supposed to love your enemies. How can you do that if the orientation of your heart towards them is one of anger, one of despising them? So the lesson for us here is when we get angry, to check our hearts. Are we angry at things that we should be angry about? Are we angry at injustice in the world? Are we angry when somebody is wronged? Those aren't bad things to be angry about. They can motivate us to take action, good, godly, biblical action. But if our anger towards someone, towards another human being, is driven by despising that person, by hating that person, Jesus says, love your enemies, not hate your enemies, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Pray for those who do you wrong. And that is what we are called to as followers of Jesus. It's not by any means to say you will never struggle with anger, because if we're honest, probably all of us do to some extent. But it's to start to develop those guards and those checks in your soul to look at the anger. Why am I angry? What is motivating me? Is this a righteous anger or is it a sinful anger? Ask yourself that question as we go into the weekend. What are the things that make you angry? Is it a righteous anger or is it a sinful anger? Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great weekend. Go in peace.